Hello everyone, welcome to the Tech Tuesdays webinar on IICS Secure Agent 101. I'm Brinda and I'll be hosting today's webinar. This webinar is focused on benefiting IICS admins and ETL architects who procure, maintain and manage IICS Agent infrastructure. The webinar would also cover IICS Secure Agent architecture and operations performed by the agent. The presenter for today's session is Abhinav Balu Bhaskaran, is a lead product specialist from the Informatica's global customer support team. With close to 10 years of experience in Informatica platform and rich troubleshooting knowledge, he comes to share his insights on IICS Secure Agent. Before we start with this webinar, here are some housekeeping tips. The webinar is scheduled for 1 hour that includes a 45 minutes webcast, and then we'll roll over to live to answer your questions for 15 minutes. All dial-in participants will be muted so that the presenter will be able to present without any kind of interruptions. Your questions can be submitted through the Q&A section that you see on your screen, and we will be addressing them to the end of the presentation. The webinar will be recorded and will be available in the Informatica Support YouTube channel and the Success portal. The link will be emailed to you as well. Please set aside some time to complete the post-webinar survey and provide your feedback and suggestions for upcoming topics for the Tech Tuesdays webinars. The Tech Tuesday webinar is a webinar series introduced within the Success portal. The Informatica Success Portal is a micro-learning platform that offers free and unlimited learning to all registered users. The Success Portal lists your success offerings. You will get to know your customer success manager information and also about the bookings available in the Ask an Expert session. You will also get customized recommendation and content. Here are some important links that you can go over for your product adoption journey. Over to you, Abhinav. Thank you.
Hey, Brinda. Thank you so much for the introduction. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody who has joined in from various parts of the world. During the next few minutes, we'll be zooming through the 101 of IICS Secure Agent, and here we have our agenda where we'll be taking a look at what is IICS Secure Agent, what are its minimum requirements, and what are the services that the agent runs by default, what are the service responsibilities, and what's the startup routine that a particular service would take, how are the services administered on the Secure Agent. We'll also be going through the upgrade sequence whenever Informatica IICS pushes an upgrade, what happens on the agent side. We'll take a look at all the log locations, and at the end we'll do a demo of everything that we have gone through. So this is what we have on our agenda. Before we get started, I just wanted to give you an idea of what motivated us to choose this for the webinar, right? So recently I've been getting a lot of questions from customers as to, hey, how do these services run on the Secure Agent? What do they do? How do they communicate with IICS? And how are they administered? Or how does the upgrade happen? So with all these questions, I thought it'll be good to do a webinar which throws light on IICS Secure Agent, which plays a very vital role in your IICS ecosystem. So let's get going and take a look at the Secure Agent. Okay, so the documentation says it's a lightweight program that runs tasks and collects metadata for Informatica intelligent cloud services. In reality, it is a lot more than just that, right? So the agent is more it's designed as a platform wherein it enables secure communication between the Informatica Intelligent Cloud Services and your organization, right? Um, the agent is the process that hosts multiple services that you're licensed for, DIS, data integration server, and um, cloud application integration are just a couple of examples. And the agent also administers the updates. It administers the services updates. It makes sure um, to it makes sure all the services are always up and running. And most importantly, the agent is where all your jobs are going to run. That's just the basic intro of Secure Agent. Let's see what it looks like from an architecture perspective. So what we are going to see is just an overview. It is not an in-depth architecture. Um, so what you see here is uh, let's say the IICS is uh, the intelligent cloud services is where all the IICS services are hosted by Informatica, or let's say this is where Informatica Cloud exists, right? And you have your secure agent here, which is within your, which is either on-prem or it is within your organization. So um, this agent is the one that's going to connect to IICS and fetch the metadata that has the job that needs to be executed, and this is where your job is going to execute. So which means it's also going to connect to the source and the target, or whatever operation it's performing. So it is also capable to connect to let's say Eloqua and read data and write onto NetSuite, for example, right? So it this is where your task is going to execute, and this is where a lot of other stuff is happening as well. But the metadata is definitely stored on IICS. So the agent can communicate, does communicate through a secure channel with IICS. Um, the users also have access to the metadata through the designer and administrator, where the user would connect to IICS and develop their mappings and administer their org. And also at the same time, when the job is executed, the job is pushed from IICS onto the secure agent, and that's where it executes. So the secure agent has access to all your the secure agent must have access to all your data endpoints, and it also has access to IICS where the metadata for a job exists. Um, Hope this throws some light on what the overall architecture would look like. Um, we'll go more in detail uh, as to what this secure agent does, and what are its responsibilities and the services that run on secure agent. Going to the next slide, we'll be taking a look at what are the minimum requirements for all of the agents. So these are just some of the very basic minimum requirements, right? You may need more based on your use case, or based on the kind of jobs that you run, or maybe based on the number of services that you have, based on what you're licensed for. So these are some of the minimum requirements that you would need to run the agent, and there is a white paper that talks about all these minimum requirements, where you need a minimum of 16 GB RAM, or 250 GB hard disk, or 250 GB disk space, and you need to make sure that all communications, outbound communications to to specific IPs that are required by by IICS are whitelisted, and at the same time port 443 is whitelisted as well, because that's where the HTTPS communication happens. If you have to set up a proxy, you need to make sure that the proxy is set up at the installation of the secure agent. And also on Windows especially, the secure agent needs to be installed and run by the administrator or by a user that has admin privileges. This is very important because when an upgrade happens, or even when the installation happens, there is quite a bit of quite a bit of configuration that goes into the registry, and to ensure that these configuration and these registry entries are seamless, and there is no permission issues, we need to make sure that it's the administrator user who runs or starts the agent on Windows. Like I said, the white paper has a lot of details um, as to what needs to be made sure when installing secure agent. So um, I would ask you to take a look at the white paper to get a clear picture of all the requirements that need to be met before the installation is performed. Okay, next up, let's take a look at the breakdown of all the agent services. When you start an agent process, or when you start the agent, here are the things that you would see. The first service that starts up is the agent core process. Then comes the administrator, and then all the services that you're licensed for come after these two services. Um, so I just have given an example here, which is a data integration service. That's what usually almost everybody is licensed for. Um, and there are, if you're licensed for, let's say, B2B gateway or mass ingestion or cloud application integration, then you would see relevant services and you would see relevant processes on the agent, on the agent machine. So today we'll mostly be taking a look at agent core, how it administers the agent services and other processes that you are licensed for. So next up, let's take a look at the service responsibilities. Like I said, let's start with agent core. Agent core is the very first process that starts up when you start the agent, right? And this is the process that is also responsible to configure your agent and associate it with your org. Um, at the time of installation, as soon as you install, you perform an console agent manager configure. So when you do that, what happens is the agent core your takes the credentials, and with the credentials it registers that particular agent with your org. So that is when the agent is clubbed to your org, and you will be able to look at this agent and the services of this agent through your org's login, right? So from the browser, when you log in, you go to the runtime environments, you would be able to see this agent, and that registration happens through the agent core. An agent core is responsible to ensure that it establishes secure connection with IICS. So we'll talk more about connections, and we'll talk more about how or we'll come to the secure connection part eventually. So from an upgrade perspective, it's the agent core that takes care of its own upgrade. So which means the upgrade of the agent and also the upgrade of all the services, right? So it's all orchestrated by the agent core. So there is something called AppSpec, where every application that you are entitled to run, every application that you are licensed for example, data integration server, if you are licensed for that, the DIS would come with an AppSpec. We'll talk more about AppSpec in detail in one of our next slides. So it's the agent core that maintains the app spec, that updates the app spec, and based on the app spec, it also downloads and deploys all the packages that are required for for running an application. Um, so after it downloads and deploys all the packages, it would start and it would also monitor all the applications that you are entitled for. Um, so all the governing activity happens within the agent core. The agent core also syncs up with IICS on application statuses. So it does a two-way poll wherein it polls the application service to ensure that the application is running. At the same time, it also polls the IICS to see if the application is supposed to be running. So if there is a change in the application status, it would know from IICS, and then it would take respective action on the application. For example, if you go and stop a service from the IICS UI, it would it would know that the application has been stopped, and it will send a stop signal to the process that runs on the agent machine. So that way it governs the applications, and it also maintains the application's statuses. Yeah, so the agent core manages the secure channels for the services. So if there is something that the service needs to communicate with IICS, or if IICS needs to communicate something specific to a service, it goes through the agent core, and the agent core routes it accordingly. So let's see a little more about AppSpec, right? So AppSpec is something is a place where all the configuration related to a licensed service exists. So let's say you're licensed for data integration server, and you're also licensed for a bunch of connectors. Let's say Snowflake and S3 and Redshift. Okay, so this app spec would basically contain all the packages and the name of all the packages, and and other settings that are relevant to the service. So with that, um, the agent core would be able to take a look at the app spec, and it should be able to tell, hey, this is the service name, and this is all the settings that the service has, and these are all the packages that the service needs. And based on the app spec, it goes and polls IICS to get all the packages that are needed, downloads it, and deploys it. So that's where AppSpec is a very important component for the agent's functioning. Here are some of the things that are present in AppSpec, but this is not an exhaustive list. There is more that is present in an AppSpec. So for example, like I said, it has the application name, the version of the application. It has dependencies where it knows it has a list of things, or a list of packages that needs to be downloaded. And most importantly, the app spec has the start script, the stop script, and the status script, the location of the scripts, the script names. Based on these entries is what the agent core would know what script to call to start a process or to start an application, and what script to use to get the status of an application. What is the script that I need to use to stop it? Um, the abstract also has something called a replacement policy. What that determines is basically basically the procedure for upgrade, right? So if it's green, then that means that um, there there should be no downtime during upgrade. We need to make sure that um, um, we need to start the upgraded application before we stop the old one, right? Uh, the replacement policy does not only govern upgrades, but it also governs some setting changes. For example, if you want to update your DIS, um, let's say you want to update the DIS JRE memory, right? You want to increase the XMX. So you make the change on the UI, uh, and the change is propagated onto the agent. The the agent core service starts a new DIS with the changes, and once the new DIS is up and running, it stops the old one, right? So this is something that's defined in the replacement policy. So if your service is going down before it, if your service is completely going down before it starts, while you make a change, then that's what is defined in the replacement policy. So this is one place you can go and see what to expect if you're making some changes onto your service. Okay, so that was about agent core, right? Um, what does the administrator do? The administrator is a process that's going to collect diagnostics on your agent machine. So if you go to your runtime environment on IICS UI, you would see that uh, that there is a section where um, all the agent OS related details, the disk space available, the RAM, and and home directory are mentioned. So all that is basically collected by the administrator. Administrator is something that can help fetch diagnostics like logs. So it's more like you can give permissions to administer uh, some of the logs that get generated on your agent host, right? Okay, so next up we'll take a look at this service startup routine, wherein when you start the DIS, what happens, or when you start the CAI or any service for that matter, what happens, right? Um So there is a component called LCM within Agent Core that is responsible to govern all the services. LCM is expanded as Local Configuration Manager. So the LCM looks at an app spec. App spec is like the blueprint of service management, right? So it takes a look at the app spec. It knows what is the start script that I need to call. Um, what are the packages I need to download. So that's the first thing it does. It looks at all the packages that need to be downloaded. It downloads all the packages and then it deploys these packages. So by deploy, what we mean is it would create a directory for that particular service, and it would create soft links to the actual package locations which would be under downloads. So we'll be taking a look at all these things that we are talking about at the end of the presentation. Um, but I want you to stay with me during the PPT to go through all these um, routines and then the app specs. Um, yeah. So at the end of the presentation, we'll take a look at all these through a small demo. Yeah. Uh, yeah. So once it deploys the startup, the LCM would basically call the start script, and as soon as the start script returns a success, it would call the status script. So then on a timely basis, which is also mentioned in the app spec, like what is the interval to poll. So based on that interval, it makes a call onto status script. Then it it polls the status of the service on a timely basis. Um, as long as the status returns success, there is no problem. The service is all up and running. So it keeps IICS updated that, hey, the DIS is up and running. So if when you go to the IICS console, you'll see that the DIS is up and running. Right? As soon as the status script returns non-zero value, there it means there is some problem, right? So whatever be the error, whatever be the current status, it updates IICS on that. Okay, so how are these services administered, right? Like I said, they are administered through the status script. Anytime it receives a non-zero value, uh, that's when that's when the status script has failed. So as soon as it has failed, it updates IICS. And also, if a user goes and stops the service um, from the UI, in that case, it invokes a stop script and it makes sure that the service goes down. Stop script is also invoked um, if there is a failure reported from the status script. So if the status script returns something like a timeout, then that means that there is some problem with the DIS where it's not responding, and it's not ideal to have it up and running in such unresponsive state. So the LCM would invoke a stop script, and then it would again invoke a start script. So it's more like a restart that it would do. Okay, so that was about starting a service, administering it, and stopping the service. So we talked about all these uh, responsibilities of agent core. We looked at administrator um, process. So going forward, let's just take a look at how upgrade happens and how we maintain runtime continuity during an upgrade. Okay, so whenever an upgrade is scheduled for IICS, um, customers are informed well in advance, and also well before the upgrade. Uh, the packages that are required, the upgraded packages are downloaded onto the agent host to ensure that there is no issue downloading packages during the upgrade or on the upgrade day. So what happens on the upgrade day is that um, there is a new agent core process that is spawned that is based out of the new binaries of agent core, and the upgraded agent core process would then connect to IICS and also administer the services that are running on the agent host. So it's like a live handoff from older agent core onto the new agent core, um, where all the services uh, on the agent are taken care by the upgraded agent core. Once that happens, the new DIS is spawned, or the or other new services that you are entitled for are spawned. So all the old services would still be up and running. While they are up and running, new DIS is spawned, and we ensure that the new DIS and the new services are completely initialized. So once they are initialized, any new jobs, any new tasks, any new operations that you perform would go or would be performed by um, by the upgraded DIS or the new DIS. The old DIS would only be executing the already running jobs. So if there are some jobs that are already that started before the upgrade, they would continue to execute on the older DIS, and the older DIS would only live until um, those jobs finish, or for they would live for 24 hours, whatever comes sooner, right? If all the jobs on old DIS are over, they complete, they succeed, and or fail. Basically, they complete with a status, then the old DIS would exit. So after the point, all the services would be upgraded to to the upgraded version, to the newer version, and uh, mm, that would be an approach that'll be followed to ensure runtime continuity during upgrade. So what this means is you would not have any job interruptions or any um, task interruptions while an upgrade is happening. So also when an upgrade is happening for a brief period of time, you may not have access to the UI, which is okay, because you would not be able to perform any development operations at that time. But most definitely your jobs would continue to run, and any production jobs or any dev jobs that you have scheduled, or that are running, or that run for a longer duration, would continue to run. Yeah, so that's how runtime continuity is maintained during upgrade. Um with that, we have covered almost all the um responsibilities of agent core and other services on the agent. So next up, we'll take a look at log locations. Uh, Here are all the places where you can fetch logs from. If you need to troubleshoot something, the first place to look would be to go to IICS console, go to administrator and check logs. That's more like the audit logs, where you can look at security logs, or if you, or some asset logs, if you want to see when a particular mapping, when were the times that a particular mapping got updated. You would be able to see that. And then if you want logs from the agent machine, you can look at agent core logs. You can look at tunnel logs for any communication related issues. Uh, all the locations are mentioned here. Uh, if When it comes to DIS, you can look at Tomcat logs, scripts.out. Scripts.out is where all the output from the status script, stop script, start script, all that writes output to scripts.out. Also, the LCM writes output to scripts.out. Mm, then you have tomcat.log, and you have all the job logs under the DIS logs directory. So then I had some URLs for you, so that you can take a look at minimum requirements, and you can also see how to archive a bunch of logs if your disk is getting filled by logs. There is an article to know how to set up proxy. There's a nice white paper on the startup routine that we discussed. However, it doesn't talk about upgrades uh, or the administrator, um, but it definitely speaks volumes about startup routine. If you want to know more detail of how services start up, you can definitely refer the white paper. Then there are some more KBs to whitelisting and PAM for agents. Without much delay, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the things that we spoke about. Let me log into my org. while this is loading, let's go straight to Putty session, and let's take a look at all the processes that are running here, right? So if you do a ps minus ef and check for all the processes that are running in this agent, you would see there is an administrator process, and you would see there is this is the agent core, and this is the data integration server. So these are all the processes that are running right on the agent. And like I said, you would see these start scripts, and yeah, this is the start script. This was a start script for DIS. This was a start script for administrator. You so time to time you might also see status scripts that would come, poll, and go back. So yeah, if you take a look at the processes that are on the agent machine, you would see all the processes that we discussed. And also, if you are licensed for many other services, you would see processes for other services as well. You would see status scripts for those services coming up and going down. On So this is something I'm showing on Linux. If you look at processes on Windows, you would see something very similar. You would see all the process arguments as the same, but the process name would be a little different. It would say Zulu, um, because we ship Azure Java, and in the process arguments you would still see all these arguments. Just one difference would be that agent core process would be or the main agent core process would be named as infiagent.exe. That's the only difference that you would see on Windows. And like I mentioned, you can go to the apps agent. Okay, so if you go to the apps directory, under apps you would see all the different um, directories that are created for other processes, for the other services that I am licensed for, right? So if I go to, let's say, agent core and administrator are something that would be created by default. You do not need any specific license. But data integration server, CIH process engine is for CAI. All these would be created only if you're licensed for those. So if you go to agent core data, this is where you would find the app specs for all the processes. You can open, so let's just open one of the app specs. Yeah, so here, as you can see, it has a list of packages that I'm licensed for, right? So I'm licensed for Amazon S3, Amazon S3 V2, Redshift, Azure blah, 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 blah. So I'm licensed for all these stuff. That's why it has all the packages here. And based on this, the agent core would basically download all the packages. And as you can see, what is the script that it needs to deploy all the packages after it downloads. Here is the script name, and then what is the script it needs to call to start the service, what is the script it needs to call to get the status, and what's it that it needs to stop the service. So you have all those details here. You also have how many attempts of restart needs to be done. Um, you can see what ports are assigned. You can see other important configurations here. So all these settings are coming from IICS, right? So you can also look at these things from the UI, at least some of it. When I click on administrator and I go to um, I go to the runtime environments, I'll be able to take a look at this agent and look at all the configurations over there. Okay, while that loads, let me go back here and just VI this again. so that I have this open and we can kind of draw a comparison. Okay, this just loaded. Let's go to runtime environments and go to this agent. And then if we take a look at the system configuration, go to data integration server, we see a bunch of configurations here, right? A bunch of properties here. One of them is JRE options. So if we go back and take a look at the app spec, we see JRE options here. Similarly, these properties are also present here. So what this means is IICS basically picks all the configuration that is available on the UI and also other default configurations and settings that are needed for a service to start up, and it builds the app spec with all these configurations. So that's what an app spec is. Else did I want to show you guys? Yeah. So again, back to runtime environments. Go to the agent, and at the bottom you would see agent host, and you would see some details of which operating system it's on, what is the operating system version, which user has installed it. So these are some essentials of what the host where the agent is installed looks like, and these details are collected by the administrator process. Also, you could go to audit logs and get a bunch of logs from here. You can also go to logs folder, the log section. Over here, you can see asset logs and security logs. So that's where you can find logs on the console. All the log locations that could be accessed on the agent is something I have already shared in the presentation.
Hello everyone, we are open for live questions. Please post your questions in the Q&A box and we'll answer them.
It seems like we already have a bunch of questions. So let me take one of them. One of the questions that were asked was what is the data that is stored on the Informatica cloud, and do you store any of the data that is being read from the source or target? Right? So the answer to this question is no. We do not store any data that is related to the source or the target, or we do not store any of the transactional data. Right? All that we store in Informatica Cloud is the metadata that is related to the mapping, and that is related to the job that you created, and we also have the user related data, the run statistics, everything that is needed to run a job, but we do not store any transactional data.
So to add upon what Abhinav just mentioned, there is one situation where the data is present when you perform like a data preview on Informatica Cloud for your source or target. The data preview is shown on IICS on the UI. So temporarily during that period, the data is stored, but right after that box is discarded, the data is destroyed on our end. So there is no storage of data at any point in time.
Thanks, Abhijit. So the next question was, is AppSpec policy different for different services? Yes, the AppSpec policy is different for different services. it basically contains the configuration of the servers and the start routine, the stop routine, the timeouts of a given service, the XMX. Um, so um, so yeah, the abstract policy is different for different servers. Can the agent be configured to auto start with the host with something like systemd or Linux? Yes, the agent can be configured to auto start. Um, on Linux, you can use Infi agent startup. On Windows, you could uh, run it as a service, so you can choose the service to start up at the startup of uh, of the host. What does DIS stand for? DIS stands for Data Integration Server. That is one of the services. That is one of the licensed services that comes on IICS. This is the service that runs your jobs. When verbose logging is enabled, does logging table store data? That's a very good question. So yes, when verbose logging is enabled, the log file that is generated for a given for a given job does have the data in that file. But having said that, the log file is something that is generated on the agent host, which can be retrieved through the IICS console. So verbose logging is something that should be enabled only during troubleshooting, and it should not be something that should be left behind after the troubleshooting session is done. So yes, if you do not want to expose the data in your log file, then verbose logging is something that is not advised. Hope that answers the question. However, verbose logging is very helpful while troubleshooting. So if there is a recommendation that comes from the support to enable verbose logging during while the support ticket is open, I would encourage to do so and provide the logs to support until the troubleshooting process is done and we get to the root cause. Moving on to the next question.
Yeah, so you will be able to, I see the next question is about secure agent alert and any latency. So as far as latency or any network issues and any alerts if the agent is going down, there is a feature within the product using operational insights for IICS to set up email alerts, etc. For various services even. So you can set up the secure agent data integration service and other services to send out an email when the secure agent is either going down or any of the specific services are going down. So that feature is currently built within the product using operational insights for IICS.
The next question I see is, if server hosting secure agent is crashed and need to install agent on new server, should we also migrate the app spec for all the configurations? That's a very good question. App spec is something that is automatically taken care of by the agent core. So if any new install, how many ever times you install the secure agent, or how many ever different machines that you install the secure agent on, the app spec is something that is going to remain the same for a given service across various agents, right? So it's something that you do not have to manually monitor or administer. The app spec is controlled by IICS, and it would push the app spec to agent code based on what all services that you're licensed for and based on the configuration that needs to be pushed.
I see the next question about setting up secure agent and linking to an org and if the parent and suborg can be linked. So the answer is yes. We have an ability called as the shared secure agent, where the secure agent can be installed in the parent org and any of the suborgs can go ahead and use the resources of the agent in the parent org. This is called as the shared agent architecture. And to do that, you would need essentially the organization hierarchy license and shared agent license. After doing that, on the parent org near the secure agent, there would be an option to share the agent across the suborgs.
The next question we have is any guidelines, best practices for Java, Max, and other processes to maximize agent processes. So I think the question is on Java XMX and also the Max DTM process setting that can be optimally set for a given agent. So this is a very good question. The XMX for the Java process and also the Max DTM processes and also the XMX for every DTM process is something that needs to be evaluated on a case-to-case basis. To give you a brief background of how you can choose to configure these settings is to take a look at the memory that your agent has, and look at the jobs that you run. Are the jobs memory intensive? Do the jobs need an higher XMX? Does the DIS have a lot of parallel processing to do? So based on your job needs and also based on your needs of based on the size of your machine, you need to choose what would be the right XMX for the DIS and what would be the right XMX for the DTMs, and how many DTMs would you be able to accommodate within the scope of your machine. So if the need of your organization is to run 10 parallel DTMs, and if you have to if every DTM needs to have 512 MB or let's say 1 GB, then you need a minimum of 10 GB at a given point of time, right? So you'll have to scale up your agent host accordingly, and you will also have to ensure that you have set the right XMX for the DTMs and you have the right XMX for the data integration server to accommodate all these requests. So this is a one-time tuning that you will have to do. You will have to consider doing on your agent host to get greater returns in a longer run. Hope that answers your question. Oh, there's another interesting question here. If any service which is running on agent machine crashes, then will there be any attempt to restart that without user's intervention? Yes, that's a good question. On service crashes, yes, the agent core would restart without user intervention. When a service crashes, you can see in the UI that the agent core is restarting the service, and in some time it should be up and running. So service crashes would be restarted by the agent core, and the number of retries and the timeouts is something that is specified in the app spec. You can open the app spec and take a look to see what to expect if a particular service crashes. Is it possible to disable Informatica Cloud Secure Agent temporarily? Yes, it is possible to shut down the secure agent. You can do an Infi agent shutdown, or on Windows you can go to the service and click on stop to stop the secure agent. That way the secure agent will be down, and it would you will see on the UI that the secure agent is not running at that time.
Yes, in case of Linux, you can have more than one secure agent on one machine. However, each secure agent needs to be registered against a separate org. We use the host name of the agent to identify the agent on the UI. So that's why it cannot, each secure agent needs to be pointing to a different org. One more question, which container technology is supported by the secure agent? Currently, we do not have any specific container technology that we support essentially. We are coming up with our next release with our Informatica serverless architecture, where you would have more ability of using Informatica's serverless technology to maintain your secure agents. Yes.
Another question.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, the next question seems to be, does secure agent group work like grid in Power Center? Can it have different dispatch modes? So secure agent group is cannot be directly compared with grid on Power Center, but it does have it by default uses the round robin dispatch mode, which means if you have like 5 secure agents in your group, and if you're running 10 jobs, at the end of the 10th job, all the secure agents would have run 2 jobs. So it by default dispatches in round robin fashion. You cannot it does not support session on grid like how Power Center does, and there is no other dispatch mode that is supported here. But yes, secure agent group can be used similar to grid, just that it by default goes in a round robin fashion.
We had some other questions previously on the chat. It was regarding why is there a need for symbolic links in the secure agent directory, and is that the design of IICS? So yes, that's right. We use symbolic links in the secure agent to ensure that there are, to prevent multiple copies of different binaries that are there within the secure agent, that is to conserve space. And it also helps us create live connections to the actual binaries and facilitate this whole app spec architecture, and ensure that we are able to keep services running while deploying a new version of the service. There was another question about relationship between the different processes and logs. So each process maintains its own logs. For example, agent core has its own log called as the agent core.log. DIS or data integration service has its Tomcat log. This is in one of the slides. And various other services that you may be using in the secure agent will have their own process running on the server, as well as a corresponding log that associates with it. And there was another question about, can REST APIs be used to orchestrate job execution? So the answer is yes. Informatica Cloud is REST API enabled. So for triggering jobs, you have a /job resource. For getting the metadata of IICS job statistics, we have different resources like activity log, activity monitor, etc. So basically whatever IICS metadata is there that you can see on the UI, most of that information is extractable using REST API.
There's a question on guidelines to add or scale up secure agents on Linux server. How do we know when to add more servers? This is a typical scaling up question. So when you're running out of when you're hitting your resource thresholds, let's say if you're hitting performance issues because of resource thresholds, if you want more parallel execution of jobs, and if you don't want to if you want to scale horizontally, you would know by looking at your host thresholds and by the number of jobs that you run. If you're not happy with the performance, you would want to scale horizontally to multiple secure agents.
Yeah, a few other questions. How to export all connections from IICS, as you were just discussing about the REST API. Similarly, for the connections that is available over the UI, the connections that is available under administrator connections page is also exposed via REST API. So you would use the Informatica Cloud REST APIs, the connection resource, to download all the connections in the JSON format, and then format them, in a flat file or anything, you can use Informatica's own JSON parsers to do the flattening, or use any other parser that is there on your end. How to test Azure connections from Linux but not from IICS console? That really depends on what Azure connection you're trying to test, right? So if it is like Azure SQL database, for testing you would use like a telnet on the Linux machine itself. If you are trying to connect to an Azure data warehouse, then you may have to connect to different resources, because Azure data warehouse is not only an Azure database, there is blob also involved. So at that point, you would be doing a HTTPS connection to the blob and also a telnet to the Azure SQL data warehouse. So yes, it is possible to test Azure connections in Linux, but it depends on what you're trying to test and what technology would be used at that point and what ports will be used. Yeah. Okay, so this says if the connection gets failed, can we get email alerts? So yes, so if, when you set up a specific job to run on a particular connection, the first thing that happens when the job is triggered is a test connection on each of the source and the target. And imagine the source connection, the test connection has failed, the job is not even triggered. The job itself sends out an email alert. So imagine if the source connection, test connection has failed, you would get an email alert saying that the test connection of the source has failed, and that's how you get the email notification. Temporarily disable, that's a very good question. So you will not be able to disable the Informatica provided Informatica Cloud Secure Agent, hosted agent. If you are not in the use of it, if you are not using the cloud hosted agent, then we would have to request our shipping department, our licensing team essentially, to disable the license from your org. And after that, you will not be able to see the Informatica Cloud hosted agent in your UI.
The next question is, what would be analogous to repository service, integration service, and DTM in Classic? And so, if we had to try to draw parallels between Power Center and IICS, let me start off saying that they are not the same. IICS works very differently. So there is no repository service here. The integration service is something that can be compared with the data integration server on the agent. The PMDTM remains the same. What would be the parent process of PMDTM is the follow-up question. The parent process of PMDTM would be the data integration server on the secure agent host. And yes, there is no repository service here. All the metadata is stored on Informatica cloud environment. Any other questions? I think that's all of the questions that we got, and we go over the list one more time. I do not see any unanswered questions. That's great. Okay, so thank you so much for attending this webinar. This was just the first cut of the secure agent. It was just the 101. There is tons of more things that we can share. Do let us know if you need any particular deep dive, or if there is any specific component that we need to talk about. We'll definitely schedule follow-up webinars, and we'll give out more information about the agent, or if you need anything about a specific component, let's say a particular connector, or agent specifically on Linux, or agent on Windows. Yeah, do let us know. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.